Last night, a troop of soldiers opened fire at a crowd of protesters in Lagos who were calling for an end to police brutality. The city and the surrounding region are under an indefinite 24-hour curfew tonight. Amnesty International has said late Tuesday that there was credible but disturbing evidence that security forces in the mega city had fatally shot protesters who came out despite the new curfew going into effect earlier that day. Let's take you to Valentine Ugochukwu, who witnessed the security forces opening fire. Valentine, maybe just tell us where you were positioned during those protests last night and what you saw.
Okay, good evening. Last night, what happened was we were informed that the security forces are going to come in the protest ground. So, and a curfew was imposed on the city by 4 p.m. But people were like, the curfew was imposed on the city, and we have only 4 hours left because people are already on the city for their business. So what happened is that when we got that information, some people started going home, and some decided to stay back. So later, the curfew was postponed from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. But before we know it, the soldiers came around 7 o'clock. Immediately they came, they started shooting at the protesters. And people, before they started shooting, during, I think in the afternoon, we saw some people taking off the cameras on the Lekki toll gates. So that was when we know something is going to go on, something is going to happen later on. So around 7, before you know it, the lights on the billboard on the toll gate just went off. Just went off. Everywhere was just dead. Before we know it, gun started blasting. You know, we were stopped because where the gun was coming from, at our back, the higher talks by the government is behind us, while the soldiers are in front of us. So there was nowhere to run to. You know, that was what happened last night.
So Valentine, if I'm asking you correctly, from what you saw, there seemed to be a very coordinated strategy unfolding in terms of the position that you as protesters were left in. And this blackout that you're talking about, was the entire lighting to the area, was that completely shut down? So were soldiers shooting at protesters in the dark?
Yeah, exactly. The light just went off. So the rumor we are hearing now that someone from the high seat ordered for that light to be shut down. So immediately the lights went down. That was when the gun started blasting.
It must have been incredibly chaotic in that moment for people to try and run for cover. Tell me exactly what was happening in that moment.
At that moment, nobody knew where to run to because beside us is just water, a lagoon. So some people that escaped that can swim jump inside the lagoon. Some of us stay back, find a corner to hide ourselves, and the soldiers kept on dropping bodies. The worst thing is that when they were shooting, some of the soldiers were busy picking up the dead bodies with their pick-up to wipe up the evidence of what they did last night.
Valentine, there's great contestation right now out of the Nigerian government around whether or not they were in fact people who were killed last night. From what you saw, did you see, you know, the soldiers, as you're alluding to, collecting dead bodies? I mean, what happened to those people who could very well have been killed in that protest?
They were collecting. You know, this thing happened under seconds, and people were confusing. You know, we are confused because they were picking bodies, and also we are still running for our lives. You know, so some that are still alive managed to get up from the side of the soldiers and came to where we are hiding also. That was exactly what happened. So, and also the soldiers refused ambulance to come in.
So Valentine,
some ambulance came to rescue us, but they refused the soldiers refused the ambulance to come in.
So effectively, by the time that the shooting died down and the soldiers left the area, if they did ever leave, did you as protesters find any bodies in the streets?
Yeah. Some were taken to the hospitals. If you have been checking the social media, you can see some pictures that is going on in social media. Some were taken to the hospitals.
What do you have to say to your government about these protests? What would you like them to know?
They've done the worst. They've done the worst. What we know is that this government is going down with what they did to the youth. You know, like, it's inhuman. It's inhuman for even a soldier to shoot at a soldier that has surrendered. But these are civilians. These are youth. We are just protesting. No weapon, no nothing. We are just kneeling down. The funniest thing is that when these people came, we were singing national anthem. We were singing national anthem when they were shooting us.
What can the international community do, Valentine, in this moment to support part of the action that is taking place, and I think to also speak out against the violation of human rights?
Come again, please.
What can the international community do to assist what you guys have been doing?
They need to come. They need to come and intervene in this crisis because we've been suffering for 60 years. The youth have been shut down for 60 years. Could you imagine the current president we have now was head of state almost over 40 years ago, and still the president. And tomorrow they will tell us we are the future leaders. So we need international community, Americans, the British, who created this problem for us, to come in and stop this government. That's what we need now. If not, Lagos is on fire everywhere. And also the hoodlums have hijacked the protest. They are burning Lagos down. They are burning Lagos down.
Given how close to danger, effectively, you were in these protests last night, are you going to continue protesting?
Definitely. As far as we have started this thing, we are going to end it. We are going to see the end. If we don't do it now, it gets worse. It will get worse. If you can hear the protesters yesterday, they were saying, we are not going anywhere. We die here. We die here to save our children. We die here to save our children.
That was Valentine Ugochukwu. Thank you so much, Valentine, for sharing your eyewitness account of those protests last night. And he's one of those that has been involved in these protests. And as you can hear, he remains resolute. And certainly by the sounds of it, those who have been part of these protests for the last couple of weeks are willing to see it through to the very end, at least until some of the demands that they're making are conceded to by the government of the day.